Welcome to chapter 12. This chapter is regarding factorial experimental design. A quick reminder again, these are a review, a kind of general over picture of the chapter. I do highly recommend all of you to still read the book, and also this video should kind of help you understand what the book is about, the key information or key points of the book. So without further ado, let's get into the chapter. We're going to talk about chapter 12. So far, we actually cover different type of experimental design. We talked about the between subject studies. We talk about the within subject study design, and now we're going to talk about the factorial experimental design, which is the last type of design that we're going to look at. Okay. This is the outline of the chapter. The factorial design is basically you have two or more factors in each variables. You actually have technically 2 by 2. This one that you see here, this is an example of 2 by 2. So technically you have 4 independent variables that you're actually measuring. You have the difficulty level, which is easy or hard, or you have a different type of exam, whether it's a printed exam or a computerized type of exam. And you can look at technically four different independent variables you are looking at, and then you're going to test your participant based on these 4 and see how well they do on each one. Okay. So what sets this different is basically you actually have more factors that you're curious about, and you have more factors that you want to prove. So you actually do these factorial design. I usually do not recommend doing factorial design for the research proposal because it's actually time consuming, and also it's make it a lot more difficult when you actually try to analyze your data. Become a lot more headaches analyzing those data. There are ways to analyze them, but then you will actually have to do more calculation to get to those points. These factorial design can also be divided into between subject and within subject, just like what we talked about before as well. So, and we'll go over all of that. Okay, between subject and within subject type of studies. Okay. So first, with the factorial design, you actually use a sample and you divide those into groups, group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. So with between subjects, so each group will be completely different. You're going to actually manipulate each factor in each group, and then you're going to create 4 different groups. This is talk about 2 by 2 design. You're going to create 4 different groups, and each group representing here, like say for this one is visibility, which is visible, and then near, proximity is near. So this is one group. So let's say you're going to have 20 people in this group. You could have 20 people in this group, and you could have 20 people in this group, and you could have 20 people in this group. So totally you're going to have 80 people. Sorry, my math. So it's 80 people, so 20 times 4 is 80 people. You're going to have total 80 people in this study to figure things out. Okay, so to see whether visibly near and further away which one people would grab to in terms of fruits and food when they're in a room. So it seems like people prefer things that are near to them and also visible to them. If it's not visible, it's less likely, even though it's near. There's less chances for people to grab those food. When it's far, people don't want to get up to actually get to those foods, so less likely they'll eat anything if you put further away. So we like to be catered. Technically, this is what this research say, that we actually like to be catered in front of us so we could see it and we could grab it. Okay. Next one is called within subject type factorial design. So again, you have 4 groups, but instead of the 4 group normally like between subject, you're going to have each participant go through all 4 categories. So all 4 categories. So you're going to have visibility of food, openly presented, aggregated, and you could do this in different orders, but you could have presently with aggregated, presently with scatter, hidden with aggregated, and then hidden with scatter. And you're going to have each one of them go through all of these 4 stages. Okay, and remember from last chapter, the order of that could be very important. So you want to make sure it's in the right order as well, that these things are presented in a different order for each participant. So make sure that there is no order effects or carryover effects. Very time consuming, very hard to do, not an ideal thing for us to do usually. If you're going to do that within subject study, factorial design, we tend to do this instead, what we call mixed factorial design. We kind of mix between the between subject and within subject all into one. Okay. So again, you're going to randomly assign these folks. You're going to cross-level them, and then you're going to manipulate each treatment as well. So instead of have one person going through all the 4 different groups, you're going to have assigning into 2 groups. Okay, 2 groups. Group 1 and Group 2. Group 1 is being pre-exposure, and then Group 2 with no exposure. And then you're going to actually have Group 1 go through both standard and high. Group 2 go both standard and high. But if you notice that we don't cross over between these 2 groups, we don't cross over from the pre-exposure group to the no pre-exposure group. So the Group 1 will stay in their group, just like between subject, but then within subject kicks in where you have 2. This one group will experience both the standard and the high. Group 2 also as well will stay in their group, but they will expose to the standard and the high. And you could actually manipulating the order within the group, so which one will come first, the high, the standard, so on and so forth. But the group itself stay in that order. Okay, so the concern we have is, again, the larger the number of levels combined, the more levels, the more complex it's going to get, and the more participant that you're going to need, and then those participants will actually be in your study for a long period of time, which you don't want to do. You want to kind of minimize that, limit those number of those participants. Okay, and the way we calculate statistically for multifactorial design is called two-way ANOVA. If you remember, between subject and within subject, we use one-way ANOVA to find out. So for the more factorial, more than 2, which is 4, you would actually use two-way ANOVAs to test it out. Again, if you see the positive, there is a significant number of ANOVA show, you have to run through post hoc as well. Okay, and the rest kind of talk about the main effects, how it occur. The key that I want you to kind of make a note of it is we're not going to worry about too much of graphing and the interaction of the graph, so do not worry, concern about those. If you have more than 2 factor in your experiment, then it's become more cumbersome, really looking at more factors, what we call the higher order factorial design, which has become really confusing. You don't have to worry at this level, because, and I'm trying not to have any of you to go through these, the 3-way factorial design and the 4-way factorial design has become very cumbersome to test. So you have to kind of cross between the A and B, the B and C, the C and D, AC, AD, and BD, so to make sure that everything is cross-sectioned and cross studies. So highly not recommended for undergrad levels. Even graduate level, if you want to really get that degree quickly, this is not the way to go. This is not a way to get that that degree very quickly. You're going to be doing spend a lot of time researching with these design. So I think that is all for chapter 12. Thank you for watching again, and stay tuned for chapter 13.